friends, this is Trish and welcome to Teacher Therapy. Today we have a very special guest named Michelle. Now she has been teaching in the classroom for 10 years, but 8 out of 10 of those years were an absolute nightmare. She dealt with everything from out of control students to really difficult coworkers to really challenging parents, and she's just going to tell us all about it. So let's go ahead and warm up, Michelle. I'm just curious, how did you get started in the classroom? Because you had kind of a non-traditional start, right?
Yes. Okay, so how I actually got started in the classroom was, well, when I was in high school, we had to have a total of 100 community service hours. So that was kind of like my first introduction to being in the classroom. So I volunteered all 4 years. I got all 100 of my hours in the kindergarten classroom that was in my neighborhood, which was actually the neighborhood school that all of my family went to, including my sisters. And it was such just a great idea and a great experience, because the kindergarten classroom that I was volunteering in was the kindergarten classroom that my sister was actually in. So that was kind of like my first introduction to the classroom. But after that, when I graduated from high school, I went on to college and I got my degree in psychology. So teaching was not on my mind. At some point, one of my old teachers who I had kind of kept in contact with was the principal. I had found out was the principal at the school that I ended up working at. So I went there to visit her one day. She was busy in a meeting. So she said, hey, do you want to stay in this classroom until I come out of the meeting? X, Y, and Z. And she put me in there. When she was done, we left to go run errands, came back, and that was it. From there, I started coming to the school like every day. I enjoyed being there more than I did going to work. And so in my mind, I was just like, this is interesting to me because I'm not even getting paid being here, and this is where I would rather be. So I knew that I had a love for children because that was very evident from me just from the time that I was a little child anyway. So I started volunteering. At the end of that year, one of the aides was retiring. And so the principal said, do you know anybody that would probably want to fill that position? So I messaged her back and said, hey, how can I apply? She told me what to do. I applied, got hired as a teacher's aide. I did that for maybe about 2 years. And then from there, I became a teacher of record. And that's how it really got started.
So I think it's so awesome that you actually taught in the same neighborhood that you grew up in. So I'm curious, what were the students like and how was it different than when you were going to school?
Oh, wow. Well, I was actually really interested in working in that school for that particular reason, because it's in the neighborhood that I grew up in. And when I was working there, I still lived in that neighborhood. So like I kind of could relate to the children because I too grew up in the neighborhood. So I understood some of the challenges that they were facing. But I think that seeing how kids have changed from when I was in school to now, it's a major difference. It's a major difference. Like, these children are not afraid of anything. They're not afraid of anything. And majority of them, I won't say all because it's not all, but a lot of them, they don't have very much respect for authority. And that makes it challenging on all parts. So that is the major way that I would say I've seen students change from the time that I was in school until now.
That makes sense. And you saw some really extreme behaviors. Can you tell us some examples of some of the behaviors that you saw?
Some of everything. Basically, like we had a kid bring a BB gun to school. We had that same kid throw a desk at a teacher. He threw a chair at a student. We had students that would run out of the building, students that would get upset and scratch or hit or pinch or bite the teacher, bite the principal if that's what they want to do. I, in particular, when I was in the pre-K classroom, when I was in 8, had a student. So I was in a pre-K 4 classroom. He would get upset whenever he wanted to and would just turn into the Tasmanian devil. And it was just like the classroom would end up upside down. And so one particular day, and it had happened on multiple occasions, but one particular day he decided to get upset and scream at me at the top of his lungs that I was a bee. And so I was trying to like calm him down and just get him away from the rest of the children, because this is happening in the middle of class. Like they were doing their free time. And so they were playing and that was going on. And it was just a lot. And so trying to get him calm into a place of away from the other students. In the midst of that, he decided to kick me. in addition to kicking me, he also pinched me, and then he ran out of the classroom. Not only did he run out of the classroom, he ran out of the building. And the school that I worked at was on a busy, like a main road. So it was very dangerous. Now, thank goodness he didn't run out of the front door. He ran out of the back door. So he was close to the parking lot, but either way, it's still dangerous. So we've seen some of everything, like cursing teachers out, just anything you can even imagine. We've seen it. We've seen it there.
And I'm kind of curious, what did the school do in terms of classroom management? Did you guys have a school-wide program or system?
Technically, there wasn't like a strategy in place. I mean, people had their own styles of managing. So management really wasn't an issue in the building. I think that it just wasn't done properly. It was more so done from a gavel position, like I'm running a tight ship, and more so instilling fear in the kids in order to make them listen. But in terms of school wide, at some point they tried to incorporate, I guess they didn't really title it PBIS, but that's what it was, because at some point when the kids would go off like to the principal's office or we had like in-school suspension, they would go there. It was just like they would chill and they would come back to class happy, come back with snacks. Like it was just crazy. And even when the principal at times, he would be roaming the halls and he may have seen a child that was out of place or just a teacher struggling with them, and he would step in, but he would step in and take the child to go get a snack. So it's just like, how is that teaching them that the behavior that they're displaying in this moment is inappropriate? And what are we going to do in order to make this behavior not be an issue moving forward?
So you told me a little bit in the email about the background of some of the students. Can you share just about some of the challenges of the neighborhood and the community?
The community that I actually worked in is one of where I live. It's one of that state's poorest communities. It's very poverty stricken. So a lot of the kids, majority of the kids, because it was also a Title I school, so everybody there qualified for free or reduced lunch. And so a lot of the students that went there were coming from all sorts of different backgrounds. I'm talking about a lot of them would be in foster care. A lot of them were coming from homes where their parents were maybe incarcerated or experiencing recidivism, or they were in homes where their parents were on drugs. And we would also see the parents that, at dismissal, when they would come to pick the kids up, at times they would be under different sorts of influences coming to pick their children up. I mean, it was just, we were seeing all sorts of things that were so disheartening. I mean, coming to school with dirty clothes on, smelling, hungry, hair not done, just very unkept. And it was so disheartening to witness that all the time. It was so heartbreaking.
Did you find it difficult to, build relationships and trust with the students? Because I know that in the education world, the thing that everybody loves to say is, oh, just build a relationship and everything will be fine. Was that a challenge for you at all?
No, it wasn't hard. I think that even the students that were tough, I think it took just a little extra work. But once you had the relationship built with them, it was solid. Once they really knew that you cared about them, it was easier to get through to them. So I do think building relationships is a big key, but it is difficult because some of them have major issues, major emotional trauma that they've been through, major mental trauma that they've been through. I even had a student, my first official year teaching, so I looped with the kids. So I had them for 4th grade and 5th grade. And one student that I had was a selective mute. Like, she literally would only speak when she wanted to. And just me and my adult brain, I'm assuming that that's a trauma response. So it was all sorts of things like that. And even at some point throughout the school year, and it took a while. It really did take a while for me to get through to her. But once I did, she was a different kid. Now, she had her moments and she went in and out of it. But there were times when she would even speak, So yes, it's building relationships wasn't necessarily hard, but were they challenging at times? Yes.
Definitely. And so you kind of touched on it already, but what was it like trying to connect with the parents? Did any of them support you, or how did that go?
Majority of the parents were absent. Like, they weren't involved at all. Even parent-teacher conference, I would never have very many parents show up at all. Like, there was even a year where I had only one parent show up the entire time. So parents weren't really involved. Like, we used Class Dojo as a form of communication, and the parents weren't even on there. And it was just, in my head, like, How are you not going to communicate with your child's teacher through an app? Like you only have to download it on your phone. Like there's all sorts of other apps on your phone. I'm sure you're on Instagram, TikTok, whatever it is that you're on, and you're not interested enough in downloading something to communicate with your child's teacher. But in addition to that, another issue was the parents were having trouble communicating at times because of the poverty in the area that they were living in. A lot of the times their phones were off. So we didn't have working numbers to communicate with parents either. But parents were also combative when they wanted to be because they weren't present. So they didn't always know what was going on. And children do have a way of not always telling the complete story when they go home. And so their mind, because of the area that we were in, their mind literally is on fight. And so a lot of times you're met with that energy straight out of the gate. And it's not everybody. I'll make sure that I keep saying that because I don't want to lump everybody in. But yes, a lot of them were combative at times. I even had a parent try to fight me. Actually, two parents. I had two parents try to fight me while I was there.
And did you feel like you had the support of your coworkers? Because I know sometimes in schools it feels like at least the coworkers have each other's backs. So did you have that experience at all?
I feel like there wasn't really very much teamwork in the building. I think that if I went to a coworker and maybe I asked them specifically for some help, there were a few that I could go to in terms of that. But as far as working together, no, there wasn't really very much support. And people were actually very selfish with their information. In my mind, again, our priority is the students. If we're here for the students and you have something in your head or in your teacher toolbox that works best for this specific student, why wouldn't you share that with every teacher that has to touch that student so that we all can incorporate the strategy to make sure that that child is getting exactly what it is that they need across the building? And so it just wasn't like that. It wasn't like that at all. I think that people were fighting for a spot to shine because there was a $25,000 bonus attached to your teaching evaluation at the end of the year if you scored a certain score. So I'm assuming that that's why they wouldn't share or be helpful to each other or to, just colleagues throughout the building. But I really don't know. I did have one teacher in particular who was so sweet, and we were co-teachers the first 2 years that I was a teacher of record. And she was my biggest support system. Honestly, she knew that I didn't know what I was doing, again, because I didn't go through teacher training before I became a teacher. And my background is in psychology. Like my undergrad degree is literally in psychology. So I had no knowledge of what it meant other than, of course, the 2 years prior that I was an aide. But other than that, as far as being a teacher of record, I didn't have very much knowledge. And she was definitely there to assist me. And I still talk to her now. When I left there, I cut off all communication with everybody, unfortunately, except for her and one other person. But she was very sweet. And one teacher in particular, so at some point right before I left, and it actually was the year that I left, I believe, they made me a special education teacher. And so that year they made me the special education teacher. All summer, I was told that I would be doing something else. I was actually told that I would be doing intervention, because that year would be my third year teaching. And after my first two, I already was like, this is not for me. Like, can I please do something else? Like, I don't mind staying here because I enjoy working with children. But I also, since I was in a self-contained classroom, was doing intervention as well. So I would step out while Miss Torney, the lady that I was just speaking about, was in the classroom and she was doing math. And I would go do intervention with other students around the building. So I realized, like, hey, I actually enjoy doing this more, and asked if I could do that next year. They said yes. The beginning of the year comes. It's our first day of pre-service. The assistant principal calls me in the office and is like, hey, you're going to do special ed. And I'm like, what? How? Like, all summer I had no training. I'm thinking that I'm supposed to be doing something else. Like, I don't know anything about special ed. I don't know how to write an IEP. I've never even seen an IEP. So what am I supposed to do? So they assigned me a mentor teacher, and she did absolutely nothing to help me. She was actually very nasty. She did not help me at all unless the assistant principal was in the room with us, like actually sitting down. But whenever he wasn't present, She wouldn't help at all. And I was very confused about why they even assigned her to help me, because she is like, that's who she is. Like, she has a reputation of being that way around the building. It's kind of unspoken, if that makes sense. But they already know that she's not helpful. So I was confused as to why they would have her assist me. But yeah, she didn't do anything to assist me, like not even show me how to write the goals on the IEP at all. I had to go back to Miss Torney, who I mentioned earlier that I said was my co-teacher previously, and she helped me out because she was a SPED teacher as well.
Wow, that is
Yeah,
crazy. And so, what was this doing to you this whole time? Like, how did this impact your health and your well-being?
it was so draining. It was so draining to the point where when COVID came and school shut down, I was happy. Like, I felt like COVID was a blessing in disguise for me, because literally every day when I came home from work, all I did was pray and ask for a way out. Like, I literally was just like, God, please get me out of this. I don't know what else to do. I do not want to be here. I'm so depressed every day. I cried every morning on the way there. Then when I got there, it was just like, the tension and the energy was so negative and so thick that you could just feel it as soon as you walked into the door. So a lot of times I would spend my lunch break alone. And don't get me wrong, when I first started there, it wasn't always as bad as it progressed to be as time went on. So in the beginning, I would kind of, like make sure that I would interact with my coworkers and show up and X, Y, and Z. But towards the end, I'll say maybe my last 2 to 3 years is when this started happening. And this is an exclusive because I haven't said this to anybody since I left. So they have no clue. Like, I didn't even tell anybody I was quitting. Like, I literally just left, and I initially left on FMLA because I was thinking, go ahead and take, just take 6 weeks, get your mind together and just breathe, and maybe you can go back. Once I got out and I did those 6 weeks and I saw how peaceful it was, I was like, I cannot go back. And at the time, it was so much going on. So this was around 2020. And I mentioned that it was when COVID first happened. And so during this time, like, I felt like the world was just going crazy. We were seeing like an uptick in BLM movements and protests. And there was so many things happening that already had my attention taken and my mind just weighed down as it was. So going in there and just dealing with the kids and their behavior and the co-workers and their nastiness, and just the parents and their lack of involvement and everything else, it literally almost broke me down to the point where if COVID hadn't closed that week for schools, because originally it was supposed to only close, I don't know if people remember that, it was only supposed to be closed for 2 weeks. And so I was like, okay, cool. These 2 weeks I can rest at home. I can get my mind together, as I said a few minutes ago. But if that hadn't happened, I was on my way to a mental health facility to check myself in, because I felt like that was the only way that I was going to be able to get a break without them saying, oh, if it's not 3 days, or if it's more than 3 days, you need a doctor's note, or if this happened, then, well, you can't get paid, or X, Y, and Z. So I literally felt like going to a mental health facility, like some sort of inpatient facility, would be the only relief that I would get. And so that was going to be my go-to if schools hadn't closed. But it was definitely like, it was killing me mentally, emotionally, physically. I started experiencing health problems. Like, I would have periods where I would just faint. And every time I went to the doctor, they kept saying, like, we don't know what's wrong with you. Like, we don't see anything from your results. Like, you look pretty healthy. Your blood work is good. All of the tests that we've run are good. Like, you have A+ like tests, So they couldn't figure out what was wrong with me. And now looking back, I also was speaking to a therapist at that point. I got a therapist because I was just like, I cannot. And straight out the gate, I had a therapist and a psychologist. The psychiatrist prescribed me, they diagnosed me with generalized anxiety, major depressive disorder, and a reaction to like acute stress, basically. And so they prescribed me, I don't remember what it was, but I never took it because I understand that your mind really is, you are in control of your mind, basically. So because I know that, I was like, I really don't need this to help me. Like, I'm just going to get myself to a place where I'm in control of my mind again. But my therapist was like, you need to leave. Like, you cannot continue to do that. You can, but if you do, it's not going to end well for you. So she definitely gave me, the paperwork, wrote up the paperwork that I needed to get me on FMLA. I did that. I extended it out as far as I could until I couldn't extend it anymore. And then finally I just went on and quit because I was like, it's no point. Like, I'm not going back. I don't want to do it anymore. I'm unhappy. I'm depressed. Like, I've just outgrown it. I don't want to be there anymore. So I went on and submitted my resignation, and that was it. And that was in 2020 when I initially took the leave, but I didn't quit officially until 2021. And I haven't, as I said earlier, seen or talked to anybody from there except 2 people.
Thank you so much for sharing. So honestly, it's interesting because my story is almost exactly the same as yours, even down to like the pandemic and officially leaving in 2021 and FMLA and being diagnosed with anxiety and depression, like everything. So it's really hard to talk about this though for teachers because there's so much shame and stigma. And even when I get comments, sometimes people will just say like, oh, teaching is so easy. You get all these holidays. Like, what are you complaining about? And I just think people have no idea. And I think it's because the more you care, the harder it is. Like the softer and sweeter your heart is, I think, the harder it is to cope in a job like that. So did you find yourself getting better over a period of time after getting out of that environment?
It took a while. It did. It took a while. I mean, luckily, when I quit, I was with my family. Like literally the moment that I submitted the resignation letter, I was staying at my family's house. So I was there with them. So I was surrounded by love. Like I don't even remember telling them, like I didn't tell anybody that I was quitting. I didn't tell anybody that I even took FMLA. And it was so crazy because my mom worked at the school as well. And people were asking her about me. And she was like, what do you mean she quit? Like, what are you talking about? So during that time, it really did. It took a while, and it took just being in love, just being embraced, like getting a lot of hugs, a lot of, we would rather have you here than, for you to let a job do that to you, and just retraining my brain and just decompressing and trying to calm my nervous system and get it to a place of still, because you really did hit the nail on the head. The more you care, the more challenging it is for you. And people think that when we have these breaks that we're just resting or chilling. No, like we are literally drained during those breaks. We can't do very much, So it's not as easy as people think it is. It's really not. Even in the summer, people say, oh, well, teachers get all summer off. What are you complaining for? Why do you come back during pre-service week complaining? And it's just like, do you know what we did all summer? Do you know what we did all summer? So it did. It really took a while for me to just get my nervous system in a place of calm after being there and being so overstimulated and mentally and emotionally exhausted all the time.
Thanks for sharing that. Yeah, I feel like it took me about 2 years.
Yes, for sure. It did. It took me about 2 years too. It did.
Yeah. Oh, I'm so glad I'm not alone. I think this is going to be really good for a lot of other teachers to hear. So you did eventually get back in the classroom and you're doing better now. Like the environment's a bit better now, right?
Yes, it's way better. So in late 2022, I got back into the classroom. So when I left, I was completely done with teaching. I was like, I will never do this again. I don't care how much you pay me. Like, there isn't anything in the world that could make me be a teacher again. But in 2022, late 2022, it was October to be exact. I got a call. I wasn't looking. I had never heard of the school, and they found me on Indeed. They said they found me on Indeed and saw my resume, reached out to me and said, hey, we have a position available. Would you like to come teach? And just from that moment, like the way that the lady was speaking to me on the phone, just her energy, her vibe, like all of it, I was like, let me see what this is about. So I let her set up the interview. And once the interview was set up and the 2 people that called to interview me got on the screen and I started doing the interview, it was, again, just a completely different vibe. They were very pleasant. They were very nice. They were very respectful. And I'm a very transparent person. So I was able to be real with them. Like I told them everything that I just told you, basically, maybe not everything, but I told them the truth about why I hadn't been teaching anymore. I also told them that I thought I was done with the classroom and that I didn't, want to be back. So got into it, and it's been way better. It's the complete opposite. Like, the environment is way better. I work with younger kids still. So the school goes up to middle school. So it stops at 8th grade, from kindergarten to 8th grade. And I think that the behavior of the older kids is a little more challenging, but because I work with 2nd grade, it's not as bad as it was previously. So I'm fine there as far as the environment, even in terms of just the staff. Like, all of the staff are nice. Like, everybody gets along. We see each other. We speak. Like, everybody's passing out hugs all day. It's just, like I said at the other place, from the moment you walked in the door, you felt the tension and the negativity. Here, when you walk in the door, you feel the positivity. You feel, and it's not to say that this is a perfect place either. I'm not saying that, but it's the complete opposite. And I have enjoyed being here, and I'm definitely glad that I got the chance to experience it. While I still feel like I'm done, I'm glad that I got the chance to experience it in a different form, and just to be in a place where people are pleasant, because experiencing that for that long, even down to the point where my coworkers, some of them would even walk past you in the hallway and just look down at the floor in order to not speak, or either just keep walking, look at you, or look straight ahead and not speak, So even something as simple as that, like, it's totally different, and I do enjoy it. I really do.
That is so good to hear. So I'm kind of curious, what advice would you have for somebody that was in a school like you were before during your nightmare season? What advice would you give somebody?
Get out. Get out. Like, you have to do what's best for you. Like, because I needed to get out before I actually did, I feel like that's why things played out the way that it did. And it got so bad to the place where I couldn't even lesson plan on Sunday nights. Like, literally, when I opened up my laptop, I would start having a panic attack. Like, I couldn't do anything. I'm talking about tears, hyperventilating. Like, I couldn't do anything. So, I mean, that's the only thing that I really can say. Get out. I mean, take care of yourself, take care of your mental health, take care of your emotional health, because those mental and emotional things will eventually turn into physical things.
Definitely. And I'm kind of curious, what do you wish the public knew about a teacher's job? What do you wish that people understood?
I wish that people understood that a teacher's job is not whatever you think it is. Like, we literally do not just have one job. You would think that our job is to just teach, but no, we are parents, we're doctors, we're lawyers, like, we are emotional, like, we're therapists. We do so many things, and they have to know that it's exhausting. Like, I think that people often compare teaching to, and I've even had family members do this to me, and I have to tell them it's not the same. People comparing teaching to parenting. And while both of them are major jobs, don't get me wrong, and neither is less important, but teaching is way different than parenting in terms of being stuck in a classroom, in a learning environment with 25, 30, 35, however many children at a time, versus one child, 2 children, 3 children, maybe some people have 6 children, but that's still totally different than being in a structured setting where you are supposed to be teaching them and helping them learn. I wish people knew that teachers are people too, and that we have lives outside of the classroom, and that they shouldn't expect us to play the role of a superhero. I feel like society has put an invisible cape on teachers, and they expect us to do it all. You guys expect us to do everything, literally, even on our free time. Like, I think that society, as I said, has put this cape on us, but I don't think that parents after a certain time should contact teachers. I don't. I think you should wait until the next day. I do, because we have lives, as I said, we have families as well. And when we're spending time with our families, it's not fair that our time is taken away to deal with job things. I wish that parents knew that we don't want to talk about work after we've been at work all day. We don't want to talk about your child's behavior at 8 p.m. when we dealt with it for 8 hours. So calling and texting and messaging and doing all of those things after hours, like, I think that they need to stop labeling us as not being a good teacher if we're not responsive after hours, because If you wouldn't call the barista from Starbucks at 6 p.m. and ask, how do you make my coffee? Like, what makes you think it's okay for you to reach out to a teacher at 6 p.m.? Like, or anytime after school? Like, there is no, oh, you're the teacher, we need help with homework. Use your resources. The internet is literally a never ending search like engine. Get on YouTube. There's all sorts of resources. Look on Google. The same way y'all go in there and look for concert tickets or bags or shoes or whatever it is that you're looking for, the latest designer, like do those things for your child. Like, students shouldn't only be learning at school. They shouldn't be. They shouldn't only be learning at school. Learning should actually start at home. And then when the students come home from school, that learning should be reinforced. It should be reinforced. So I think that that's the main thing that I really want people to do, that to know, is that teaching is not just one job. Like, we do so many things. We do so many things and we're tired. We're tired and we're tired on our free time. And so a lot of people don't understand that either. Like, teacher tired is a whole different tired, and people don't understand that. Like, you are literally listening to noise all day. Like, you're literally overstimulated all day. You have to be on all day. Like, you have to make decisions constantly all day. So we're tired when it's our free time. It's not that we're being fake or we don't want to hang out or we don't want to answer the phone because we don't want to talk to you. Like, no, we're just tired. We've talked for 8 hours. You know, we've spent the whole week, Monday through Friday, dealing with students and their challenges, their emotional needs, all of those things, their energy that they're bringing into the classroom. Those things affects us. We're carrying all of the weight that all of our students are carrying versus, and this is why I say parents, the 3 children that you may have, you know what I'm saying? That also are biologically connected to you. So that's a difference. You love your children because it's innate. Teachers have to literally make the decision to love the children. We do. Like, we are not biologically connected to these kids. So we have to make the decision to show up and to love them and to treat them well, just as we do with any other human. And I think that people should realize that, like, we are human too. We have needs too. We have lives too. We cannot do it all. We cannot do it all. And we should not be expected to do it all. And especially for what they're paying us. Like, we shouldn't be expected to do it all at all.
Definitely. That was so beautifully stated. I can hear the amens in the crowd. So I'm curious, this is kind of a tough question, but I'm just curious what you think is needed to bring change to the community that you taught at. What do you think is missing that could really transform things?
I think the first thing that's missing is parent involvement, honestly. I think that's the first thing that's missing, but I think that that's going to be the most challenging because of the environmental challenges that is shown in that neighborhood. As I said, a lot of them are on suffering from addictions. A lot of them are incarcerated. A lot of them are going back and forth in and out of jail or in and out of prison. So I think that that is the first thing that needs to happen, parent involvement. I think that another thing is a lot of parents struggled in school as well. So they literally just don't have the tools. They don't have the tools, and they may not have the know-how to know what it is that's necessary for their child and what's necessary for their particular learning style. So maybe some classes could be introduced to parents to help them understand that, hey, this is what an involved parent looks like. Hey, this is how you reach out to your child's teacher. Hey, you should have an appropriate email address that you use when you want to message your child's teacher, or hey, you can use these resources to help your child at home. I think that that's the first step. And then from there, just policy changes, and also hiring staff that cares, like not being thirsty for bodies to be in the building and to fill positions, like hiring staff that cares and actually training them on how to implement the things that are necessary for the students at that particular school or in that particular environment. If they want to promote SEL, I don't think that that's a problem. I think that the teachers, for one, need to be people who have positive mindsets starting off. Like, your mindset cannot be negative, and you are supposed to be teaching people how to, you know, be positive and how to emotionally regulate. If when you get upset, the first thing you do is scream at the top of your lungs to the class. you know, how are you going to be an example? So I think that maybe training people on how to specifically implement whatever the resources are that's going to cater emotional to the children's emotional needs would be something that would be helpful in that aspect. And lastly, more programs, maybe more programs for the kids and for them to be able to show up and to feel a sense of stability, maybe consistency, and to just have a place of care where they can go and feel, even if it's like a neighborhood gym or something fun for the kids to be able to do in the neighborhood, because there is so much crime. I'm talking about, like, there have been times where we've had to go on lockdown, and at the end of the day, students were walking home and they've had to walk past dead bodies because a person had gotten killed while school was in session. So literally, these children are experiencing so much trauma. They really are. So I think they also need counseling. Like, that would be something that would be beneficial, like maybe having an on-site counselor and just letting them know, like, hey, it's okay to talk about your feelings. It's okay to, just express whatever it is that's going on in a different way, maybe than acting out, or whatever behavior it is that they're displaying, maybe shutting down, because acting out is not always, the behavior that a child shows because they're experiencing challenges at home or whatever the challenge is that they may be experiencing or wherever. Shutting down is also something as well. So just having a person in place that can specifically cater to the emotional needs of these students and teaching them how to emotionally regulate from the time that they enter the building at pre-K 4 until they leave at 5th grade. I think that those are things that could be a start to help.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Michelle. This has been really good. And again, thank you so much for your honesty. And for my audience, thank you guys so much for watching. If you have any show ideas, type them in the comment section. We'll see you guys next time. Bye for now.